The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Mill House as Camilla, Queen Consort of England, stood at her bedroom window, watching the approaching convoy of black vehicles. Her hands trembled slightly as she recognized the distinctive emblems of the Royal Protection Squad mixed with officials from the Crown Estate Office. After 40 years of navigating royal politics, she knew this visit was different from the routine security checks she had grown accustomed to. Detective Inspector Sarah Morrison stepped out of the lead vehicle, her crisp uniform bearing the insignia that commanded immediate respect. Behind her, a team of 6 specialists emerged, each carrying equipment that suggested this was no ordinary inspection. The warrant in Morrison's briefcase had been signed by the highest authorities in the land, granting unprecedented access to search the private residence of a sitting queen consort. The investigation had begun 3 weeks earlier when a former palace employee, Margaret Thornfield, came forward with startling allegations. Margaret had worked as a senior housemaid at Buckingham Palace for 35 years before her retirement in 2019. Her conscience had been troubled for years by what she had witnessed during the chaotic weeks following Queen Elizabeth's passing in September 2022. The transfer of personal effects and royal heirlooms had been swift and, according to Margaret, not entirely transparent. Margaret's statement to the authorities was detailed and specific. She described seeing several pieces of jewelry being packed into unmarked boxes during the clearing of the Queen's private apartments. Among these items were pieces she recognized as part of the Crown's historic collection, including a diamond tiara that had belonged to Queen Victoria, several emerald brooches that were wedding gifts from foreign dignitaries, and, most significantly, a sapphire necklace that had been featured in official royal portraits for over a century. The sapphire necklace held particular significance because it had been specifically mentioned in Queen Elizabeth's will as an item to be preserved in the royal collection for future generations. The piece consisted of 7 graduated Ceylon sapphires, each surrounded by diamonds and connected by an intricate platinum chain crafted by Gerard in 1897. Its estimated value exceeded £2 million, but its historical importance to the crown was immeasurable. When Margaret reported seeing this necklace being placed in a box marked for Camilla's personal effects, rather than the royal collection inventory, she initially assumed it was an administrative error. However, weeks passed, and the piece never appeared in the official catalog of crown jewelry. Margaret's inquiries to her former colleagues were met with uncomfortable silence and suggestions that she might have been mistaken about what she saw. The weight of responsibility grew heavier on Margaret's shoulders with each passing month. She had served the royal family with unwavering loyalty throughout her career, but her dedication to preserving the crown's heritage ultimately compelled her to contact the authorities. Her decision was not made lightly, understanding the potential consequences of accusing a member of the royal family of impropriety. The Royal Protection Squad's investigation began discreetly, with Detective Inspector Morrison personally reviewing Margaret's statement and cross-referencing it with palace inventory records. The discrepancies were troubling. Several items that should have been catalogued as crown property were notably absent from the official records, while the transfer log showed unusual gaps during the period immediately following the Queen's death. Morrison's team conducted interviews with other palace staff members, many of whom requested anonymity due to their ongoing employment. A pattern emerged from these conversations, suggesting that the distribution of the Queen's personal effects had been handled with unusual haste and limited oversight. Several employees mentioned feeling uncomfortable about certain decisions, but had been reluctant to speak out against senior royal family members. The investigation expanded to include financial records and insurance claims. The Crown Estate's insurance policies covered specific items in the royal collection, and any transfers or changes in custody required detailed documentation. Morrison discovered that several high-value pieces had been quietly removed from these policies without the standard approval processes being followed. As the evidence mounted, Morrison faced the delicate task of approaching the royal household with her findings. The constitutional implications were significant, as any suggestion of impropriety involving the monarchy could have far-reaching consequences for the institution's reputation. However, the inspector's oath to uphold the law applied equally to all citizens, regardless of their title or position. The decision to obtain a search warrant for Camilla's private residence was made at the highest levels of government, with consultation from the Prime Minister's office and the Lord Chamberlain. The warrant was carefully worded to respect the dignity of the royal family, while allowing investigators to locate and recover any crown property that might have been inappropriately transferred. As Morrison approached the front door of Raymill House, she reflected on the gravity of the situation. The Queen Consort's cooperation would be crucial in resolving the matter quickly and quietly, but the inspector was prepared for resistance. Behind the elegant facade of the country estate, answers to questions that had haunted the investigation for weeks were waiting to be discovered. The doorbell echoed through the house as Morrison pressed it, knowing that the next few hours would likely determine the course of one of the most sensitive investigations in recent royal history. The stakes were enormous, not just for Camilla personally, but for the entire monarchy's credibility and the preservation of centuries of royal heritage. Inside the house, Camilla took a deep breath and walked toward the front door, her mind racing through the possible reasons for this unexpected visit. She had heard whispers of an investigation but had assumed it would remain an internal palace matter. The presence of the Royal Protection Squad at her private residence suggested that the situation had escalated beyond anything she had anticipated. The housekeeper, Mrs. Williams, reached the door first and looked back at Camilla with concern evident in her eyes. Both women understood that this moment would mark a significant turning point, though neither could fully grasp the extent of the revelations that lay ahead. As the door opened and Detective Inspector Morrison presented her credentials and warrant, the carefully maintained privacy of the royal family's internal affairs was about to be exposed to unprecedented scrutiny. The investigation that had begun with one former employee's troubled conscience was now poised to uncover secrets that could reshape public understanding of how the royal family managed its most precious treasures. The quiet countryside setting of Raymill House seemed incongruous with the drama that was about to unfold. This peaceful retreat, where Camilla had hoped to enjoy her retirement from public duties and private comfort, was now the focal point of an investigation that could have consequences extending far beyond the recovery of missing jewelry. The royal watch had arrived, and there would be no escaping the thorough examination of every corner of her private sanctuary. Detective Inspector Morrison stepped across the threshold of Raymill House, her trained eyes immediately cataloging the opulent surroundings. The entrance hall featured gleaming marble floors and walls adorned with what appeared to be original oil paintings, their ornate frames catching the morning light streaming through tall windows. Camilla stood waiting in an emerald green dress that complemented her carefully styled silver hair, her posture regal despite the circumstances. "Your Majesty," Morrison began, using the formal address while presenting the search warrant with both hands as protocol required. "I regret the necessity of this visit, but we are investigating the whereabouts of certain items belonging to the Crown Estate. Your cooperation would be greatly appreciated." Camilla examined the document with the practiced eye of someone who had spent decades reviewing official papers. Her expression remained composed, though Morrison noticed the slight tightening around her eyes as she read the specific items listed in the warrant. The sapphire necklace was mentioned by name, along with several other pieces that had been flagged as missing from the royal collection. "I understand your position, Inspector," Camilla replied, her voice steady but carrying an undertone of resignation. "However, I must express my surprise at these allegations. The transfer of the late Queen's personal effects was handled according to her express wishes, as communicated to me by her private secretary." Morrison's team spread throughout the house with professional efficiency, their movements carefully coordinated to respect the dignity of the residents while ensuring no area went unexamined. Specialist searchers began with the most obvious locations where valuable items might be stored, including the master bedroom's walk-in closet and a study that housed an antique safe. The Queen Consort led Morrison to a sitting room overlooking the gardens, where afternoon tea had been prepared despite the unusual circumstances. This small gesture of maintaining normalcy spoke to Camilla's years of experience in handling difficult situations with grace under pressure. "Inspector, might I ask about the source of these allegations?" Camilla inquired as she poured tea from an elegant porcelain service. "As I'm sure you understand, the weeks following Elizabeth's passing were emotionally challenging for all of us. If there were administrative errors in the handling of her effects, I would be the first to want them corrected." Morrison appreciated the diplomatic approach, but remained focused on her duty. "Ma'am, I cannot discuss the specifics of our investigation, but I can assure you that we have credible evidence suggesting certain Crown property may have been inadvertently included with your personal inheritance." The conversation was interrupted by Sergeant Collins calling from upstairs. His tone was professional, but carried an undertone of excitement that suggested a significant discovery. Morrison excused herself and climbed the elegant staircase, her footsteps muffled by a burgundy runner that likely cost more than her annual salary. In the master bedroom, Sergeant Collins stood beside an open jewelry box on Camilla's dressing table. Inside, nestled in black velvet compartments, were several pieces that immediately caught Morrison's attention. Among them was an emerald brooch featuring the distinctive three-feather design associated with the Prince of Wales, and a diamond bracelet that matched the description of items reported missing from the Crown collection. "Ma'am," Collins said quietly, "these pieces match the descriptions in our inventory list. The emerald brooch in particular is listed as Crown property due to its historical significance as a coronation gift from the Indian government in 1953. Morrison carefully photographed each piece in its original position before calling for Camilla to join them upstairs. The Queen Consort's composed demeanor showed the first signs of strain as she looked at the jewelry that had been discovered. Her explanation was immediate, but notably less confident than her earlier responses. "Those pieces were given to me by Elizabeth herself during her final weeks," Camilla said, her voice carrying genuine emotion. "She specifically told me that she wanted me to have them as a remembrance of our friendship. I had no reason to question whether they were part of the Crown collection or her personal property." Morrison nodded sympathetically while continuing to document the discovery. "Ma'am, I don't doubt your good faith in this matter. However, these items are recorded in the Crown inventory, which legally supersedes any personal gifts. We'll need to take custody of them pending further investigation." The search continued throughout the afternoon, revealing additional items of concern. In a guest bedroom that served as Camilla's private office, investigators discovered a locked filing cabinet containing documentation that shed new light on the transfer process. Among the papers were handwritten notes from Queen Elizabeth's private secretary, detailing specific instructions about various personal effects. These notes revealed a complex situation that went beyond simple administrative errors. Queen Elizabeth had apparently been very specific about which items she considered personal property versus Crown assets, but her instructions had not been consistently followed during the emotionally charged weeks following her death. Some items she had designated as personal gifts were indeed Crown property, while others that legally belonged to her personally had been mistakenly included in the royal collection. Dr. Patricia Henley, a specialist in royal artifacts brought in to authenticate the discovered items, arrived at Heirlooms House in the early evening. Her reputation as an expert in Crown jewelry made her assessment crucial for determining the true ownership status of each piece. Dr. Henley had previously cataloged the royal collection and was intimately familiar with the provenance of thousands of items. Her examination of the jewelry revealed both troubling and mitigating facts. The emerald brooch was indeed Crown property, as suspected, but its presence in Camilla's collection appeared to be the result of unclear communication rather than deliberate appropriation. The diamond bracelet, however, presented a more complex situation, as Queen Elizabeth had received it as a personal gift, but its value and historical significance suggested it should have remained with the Crown. The most significant discovery came when Dr. Henley examined a small wooden box that had been found in the back of a bedroom closet. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was the sapphire necklace that had triggered the investigation. The piece was unmistakably authentic, its Ceylon sapphires glowing with the deep blue color that had made it a favorite of Queen Elizabeth throughout her reign. "This changes everything, Dr." Henley whispered as she carefully lifted the necklace from its wrapping. "This piece is explicitly mentioned in the Queen's will as remaining with the Crown. Its presence here suggests either a serious administrative error or something more concerning." Camilla's reaction to the discovery of the sapphire necklace was markedly different from her responses to the earlier finds. Her composure finally cracked, and tears welled in her eyes as she looked at the piece that had become the centerpiece of the investigation. "I honestly don't know how that got there," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The last time I saw that necklace, Elizabeth was wearing it for her final official portrait. I swear to you, Inspector, I have no memory of taking possession of it." Morrison faced a delicate situation. The evidence suggested that Crown property had indeed been inappropriately transferred to Camilla's possession, but the Queen Consort's reactions seemed genuine in their surprise and distress. The investigation would need to delve deeper into the circumstances surrounding the Queen's death and the subsequent handling of her effects. As evening approached, Morrison's team had recovered 17 pieces of jewelry and several other artifacts that appeared to belong to the Crown collection. Each item was carefully documented and prepared for return to the royal collection, but questions remained about how they had ended up in Camilla's possession and whether her explanations could be corroborated. The investigation had revealed not just missing jewelry, but a troubling lack of oversight in the handling of royal assets during times of transition. The systems that were supposed to protect the crown's heritage had failed, whether through negligence, miscommunication, or something more deliberate remained to be determined. As the day concluded, Morrison knew that the discovery of the missing heirlooms was only the beginning of a larger investigation into the procedures and protocols that governed the royal family's most precious possessions. The Queen Consort's cooperation had been valuable, but serious questions remained about accountability and the need for reforms to prevent similar incidents in the future. The peaceful countryside setting of Heirlooms House had yielded its secrets, but the implications of those discoveries would reverberate through the highest levels of the British establishment for months to come. The weeks following the search at Heirlooms House transformed what had begun as a discreet investigation into a constitutional crisis that reached the highest levels of the British government. Detective Inspector Morrison found herself at the center of a complex web of palace politics, legal challenges, and media speculation that threatened to overshadow the original purpose of recovering missing crown property. King Charles received notification of the investigation's findings during a private audience with the Lord Chamberlain at Clarence House. The monarch's reaction was one of profound disappointment rather than anger, as he grappled with the implications for both his wife and the institution of the monarchy. Sources close to the king described him as being deeply troubled by the possibility that the transition period following his mother's death had been mishandled to such an extent. The king immediately ordered a comprehensive review of all procedures governing the transfer of royal property, appointing Sir Richard Hartwell, a former Supreme Court justice, to lead an independent inquiry. Sir Richard's mandate was broad, encompassing not only the specific items found at Camilla's residence, but also the entire system of cataloging and protecting crown assets during periods of transition. Camilla's legal team, led by prominent barrister Sir Geoffrey Morrison, worked frantically to piece together the events of September 2022. Their investigation revealed a picture of confusion and competing authorities during the emotionally charged weeks following Queen Elizabeth's death. Multiple individuals had been given responsibility for different aspects of the property transfer, but communication between these teams had been severely lacking. The breakthrough in understanding what had actually occurred came from an unexpected source. Lady Margaret Thornfield, the former palace employee whose allegations had triggered the investigation, agreed to participate in a series of recorded interviews that revealed the depth of the administrative chaos that had followed the Queen's passing. Nobody wanted to be the person to question what the grieving family members were taking, Lady Margaret explained during one particularly emotional session. When I saw items being packed that I knew belonged to the Crown collection, I mentioned it to the senior staff, but I was told that the family's wishes took precedence during such a difficult time. Her testimony revealed that Camilla had not personally selected the items found in her possession. Instead, they had been packed by palace staff who were working from incomplete and sometimes contradictory lists provided by different departments. The sapphire necklace, in particular, had been included in a box of jewelry that Queen Elizabeth had specifically requested be given to Camilla, but the staff member responsible for packing had grabbed the wrong necklace from the Queen's collection. This revelation shifted the focus of the investigation from potential criminal activity to systemic failures in royal administration. Dr. Patricia Henley's detailed analysis of the recovered items supported this theory, as many of the pieces had been stored together in ways that suggested bulk packing rather than careful selection. The constitutional implications became more complex when lawyers discovered that several of the recovered items existed in a legal gray area between personal and crown property. Queen Elizabeth had purchased some pieces with her private funds but had worn them for official state functions, creating ambiguity about their true ownership status. Sir Geoffrey Morrison's legal team prepared a comprehensive defense strategy that focused on Camilla's good faith acceptance of what she believed to be legitimate gifts from Queen Elizabeth. Character witnesses came forward to testify about conversations they had had with the late Queen regarding her intention to leave specific pieces to Camilla as tokens of their friendship. Princess Anne played a crucial role in resolving some of the confusion by providing detailed testimony about her mother's wishes regarding personal effects. The Princess Royal's methodical approach to documenting family conversations proved invaluable in distinguishing between items that Queen Elizabeth had truly intended as personal gifts and those that should have remained with the crown. The media attention surrounding the investigation intensified when news of the search leaked to several tabloid newspapers. Headlines screamed about royal jewelry scandal and crown jewels in wrong hands, forcing Buckingham Palace to issue its first official statement about the ongoing investigation. The palace's statement was carefully crafted to protect both Camilla's reputation and the institution's credibility while acknowledging the seriousness of the situation. It emphasized the complexity of managing thousands of valuable items during a period of unprecedented grief and transition, while committing to implementing improved procedures to prevent future problems. Public reaction was mixed, with polling showing that a majority of citizens believed Camilla had acted in good faith, while a significant minority expressed concern about the security of crown assets. Royal historians noted that similar confusion had occurred during previous monarchical transitions, but never with such valuable items and never with such extensive media coverage. The investigation's scope expanded to include other members of the royal family who had received items from Queen Elizabeth's personal collection. Similar discrepancies were discovered, though none as significant as those found at Heirlooms House. These findings reinforced the theory that systemic problems, rather than individual misconduct, were responsible for the missing items. International implications emerged when it was discovered that some of the items in question had diplomatic significance. The emerald brooch found in Camilla's possession had been a gift from the Indian government during Queen Elizabeth's coronation, and its misplacement created awkward conversations between the British and Indian foreign ministries. Dr. Henley's final report on the recovered items provided crucial context for understanding their true significance. Beyond their monetary value, many pieces represented important historical connections between Britain and other nations, making their proper custody essential for maintaining diplomatic relationships. The resolution of the investigation came through a combination of legal precedent and royal pragmatism. Sir Richard Hartwell's independent inquiry concluded that while crown property had indeed been improperly transferred, no criminal intent could be established. His recommendations focused on implementing robust procedures for future transitions and creating clearer definitions of personal versus crown property. Camilla voluntarily returned all items identified as crown property and accepted the appointment of a personal curator to help manage her legitimate jewelry collection. This gesture was seen as both appropriate and generous, helping to restore public confidence in her integrity while ensuring that similar mistakes could not occur in the future. The king implemented Sir Richard's recommendations immediately, creating a new department within the royal household specifically responsible for managing transitions and transfers of valuable property. This department was given unprecedented authority to override family preferences when crown assets were involved, ensuring that emotion and grief could not again compromise the integrity of the royal collection. Lady Margaret Thornfield was quietly honored for her courage in coming forward, receiving a private audience with the king where he personally thanked her for her service to the crown. Her decision to speak out, despite the personal risks involved, was credited with preventing the permanent loss of irreplaceable historical artifacts. The investigation's conclusion brought relief to all parties involved, but it also highlighted the need for ongoing vigilance in protecting Britain's royal heritage. The procedures put in place following the investigation were tested within months when other senior royals passed away, and the improved systems successfully prevented any recurrence of the problems that had plagued Queen Elizabeth's transition. For Camilla, the experience was transformative in unexpected ways. The investigation had subjected her to intense scrutiny and public speculation, but the ultimate vindication of her character strengthened her position within the royal family and enhanced her credibility with the British public. Her graceful handling of the situation and willingness to cooperate fully with authorities demonstrated the kind of dignified leadership that the monarchy needed. The recovered heirlooms were returned to their proper places within the crown collection, where they continue to serve as symbols of Britain's rich royal heritage. The sapphire necklace that had triggered the investigation was featured prominently in the next state banquet, worn by Queen Catherine as a tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth and a symbol of the continuity that the monarchy represents. The Royal Watch investigation became a case study in constitutional law schools, illustrating the delicate balance between personal grief and institutional responsibility that defines the modern monarchy. Its resolution demonstrated that even the most privileged members of society are subject to the rule of law, while also showing that good faith mistakes can be corrected without destroying the trust that holds the constitutional system together. Years later, when historians examine this period of royal transition, the investigation will likely be remembered not for the temporary confusion it revealed, but for the reforms it inspired and the strengthening of procedures that protect Britain's royal heritage for future generations. The Crown's treasures are more secure now than they have ever been, watched over by systems designed to honor both the emotional needs of grieving families and the constitutional requirements of preserving the nation's most precious artifacts.